that's the way I need to go. Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and I'm continuing my series In Search of Sussex, part of my quest for England. And as you know, and if you've been following me, I'm following on the trail of Arthur Stanley Cook in his book Off the Beaten Track in Sussex. And I have come through the Knepp estate. I've started at Shipley. This is the second in this little three-part series, and I'm heading to Thakeham, which is that way about a couple of miles now. I've come a couple of miles down the way. We've got this track here, and then we cross another road and there's another track. So I might as well get cracking. Here we go, footpath sign, bit wobbly. In fact, that's a footpath. These is a public bridleway because it is actually quite wide. And interestingly, there are two drainage ditches either side. Now, this, I think, is a very old path. In fact, possibly an Anglo-Saxon path. And I'll tell you the reason why I think that a little bit later on. And we carry on down this way, we will eventually get to Thakeham, but we've got to cross another road and then walk on some tarmac. So let's get down the other end. Well, this is the other side of the lane now, or the road. We come into a tarmac bit because we've gone past some little farms, but what we do here is we meet the Billingshurst Road, which cuts across east and west from over on the A24 Ashington, and it goes westwards towards Billingshurst that way. And I'm not going to go on that road, I'm just going to cross it and get into Crays Lane. So that's the road that leads me to Thakeham. Oh, well, here we are. We've come to Thakeham. This is about 3/4 of a mile, this road, Crays Lane, and originally, as I mentioned before, an Anglo-Saxon road. It actually curves around the church, and that suggests that the road is actually older than the church itself, and it moves its way up into the Weald, possibly to Horsham. There's note of it being called North Lane in 1693. But I'm not going to circle round. I'm going to take a shorter cut, because here we have the church on this knoll, which gives us some interesting views. Now, I've actually made a number of videos in Thakeham, so I'm going to try not to repeat myself on all of that. We've got the wonderful church, and if you're interested in the bells of the church and how they're rung, I made a fascinating video about that. I've done a walkthrough with a lovely lady called Cynthia Julian, who took me around. I'll put links to all the videos that I've done in this area. Walks from Warminghurst to Thakeham as well. So lots of areas that I've already covered, but lots of other things to see too. Oh, a chair, a bench. Nice to be able to sit down and have a bit of a relax and read the old book, see what Arthur says about Thakeham. Well, Thakeham is a very old name, and actually it translates in Old English to a thatched homestead. So not so many thatched houses now, but you could imagine back in the Saxon period where the settlement grew, there would have been much more thatched on the houses, would have been the way you roofed your house. It's interesting because this is actually a later settlement, the Anglo-Saxon settlement here. If you go a little bit to the west, you'll go to an area where, really at the top of the street, the main street, where back in Neolithic times and Mesolithic times, flint axes and various implements have been found. On the other side of this wall and beyond the field into the trees just over the way there is a spring, a natural spring. I think it's called St. Mary's Spring after the church. And that's probably the reason why the Anglo-Saxons, instead of going where possibly the Neolithic people had made camp, had moved here, putting their church on the knoll, as I said before, and having access to water, which was absolutely vital. And then, of course, this route, which goes around the church, suggesting that the church was actually after the route. So perhaps ancient people were using that track going north, but also south down to the Downs. It's a fabulous church. It's really lovely, and I recommend checking out my other videos because, again, because of the virus, we can't go inside. They're still all locked. I'm hoping that at some point in the next few weeks, perhaps they will deem it possible to open up the churches, because you're going to get very few visitors, even if it's not for congregations, but just for visitors to come in. I think it's essential to come and look at these wonderful ancient monuments. But check out the videos because there are some rather interesting ones. Well, this is absolutely idyllic, isn't it? This beautiful place, tucked out of the way. Wonderful. Now, in that direction is Thakeham Place. There used to be a manor house there, but it's long since gone. Arthur makes reference to it. And behind me, you've got the main village square. And it's just beautiful. There's some fantastic properties there. It's quintessentially English with all the timber framing. And there's a brick-built building there, built in the 18th century, called Cumberland House. Originally the Duke of Cumberland Inn, but it was soon used as a workhouse. But before, in 1686, there's reference to an alehouse on that site with one bed. So if you were a guest passing through, I guess you were and were lucky, you could stay there the night. There's some wonderful, wonderful timber framed and thatched properties up the main street, which is the main route in, dating back possibly to the 13th century, which is incredible really. In the book, Arthur gives us a view of the street looking down. I think this is an artist's impression of the street because there's no way that you can see the church from here, and there's not all the buildings that he seems to claim there is. I've come out of the street, which is the junction behind me. And looking at my map here, I can see that I got to go left. Now it's interesting because in the book, Arthur says at the top end of the street there's a derelict farm, and you then head westwards towards West Chiltington, which is the next part of the journey. This, I think, must mean townhouse farm. I've yet to see if it's derelict 100 years later. There it is. That is where I continue on my journey to West Chiltington. So shouldn't be a terribly far trip from here. I've done most of it now. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, give me a thumbs up or a like if you're watching on Facebook. Thumbs up on YouTube, of course. Don't forget to follow, like and subscribe, become a patron and support what I do, which would be really helpful. And I'll see you on the next episode. Very much looking forward to it on this rather beautiful, glorious day. Till next time, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.